Hello, everyone. It's Charlene Lee, and I'm excited today to be talking about quite a few new things. In particular, I'm talking about AI processes and the impact that generative AI, has on the way we do work inside of organizations. And as you can imagine, because generative AI is so good at changing and automating tasks, we know that processes are going to change too as well. And so I thought I'd do a deeper dive into how to think about which processes and how they're going to be changing, and also how to create this change so that it doesn't become overly disruptive to people. Because this is where the rubber meets the road. It's where, again, people are seeing the way they used to do things not being the way they need to do things in the future because of generative AI. So I would love for you to first of all share where you're coming from today, and also how are you changing your processes at your organization because of AI. Again, we're getting into the weeds a little bit here, but I think it's important to understand the implications of when you roll out generative AI. How is it going to change your process, the way that you get things done? How to think about them, how to systematically go through and evaluate which of these processes could be ripe for AI use to automate completely, partially, or just to augment the way you do things today with AI. I was recently talking to the CMO of a large organization, and he was expressing that they do things really well already. It's a high functioning organization. And he's like, I don't want to mess with it. I don't want to use AI, bring it in, disrupt the entire organization and the processes they have fine-tuned over years, and just throw it all up into the air. And so I want to go through and I was talking to him about this particular issue is how do you identify the right place to start so that you can take advantage, full advantage of what AI has to offer, but at the same time, not create so much disruption that it negates the benefits that you get from it. So just want to see again, thank you, Jay, for joining and posting the slides I'm going to have out there. I'll post them onto other channels here. And so I do have some slides today, as I usually do, just to help guide the conversation here. So what are some of the challenges of generative AI that we find? Again, there is just a tremendous amount of fear and resistance from people. They hear about all the hallucinations, the problems, they're worried about their jobs being taken away. So, very valid concerns that people have. There's unpredictable results, again, because of the hallucinations that, again, require oversight. So, how much of a particular process can you automate? When do we feel comfortable turning it over and trusting the AI to do the job that we want it to do? Uh, Again, the automation of creativity in particular, we like to say that AI can't be creative. While the reality is it can be very creative and think about things that we never thought of before. And that requires a new type of human AI collaboration interfacing that we've never created before. Again, there's complex integrations that have to happen across silos for AI to work. There is a need for continuous, I call it dynamic learning, meaning that the AI and the technology doesn't stand still. So you may learn something and you may have to relearn it again and again. And that can be very frustrating. Also, I think something that's happening with AI is that we put it on a pedestal. We set such high expectations. AI is going to change the world. It's going to transform everything. And then when it doesn't happen or it doesn't happen well, it erodes our trust in the AI, in the technology. And so people start thinking, oh, well, I can't trust my leaders even to tell me what's going on with this because they say it's going to be like this and it turns out to be something completely different. And of course, there are some significant ethical and compliance concerns that are in there. So again, these are just some of the challenges that I think are out there. And I just have this comment from a couple of people. So first of all, we had Jake joining and just sharing we are using AI to change our process of data analysis from the social listening projects we do for clients. Great example because there's so much data, unstructured data, and we'll talk about that in just a second. We have Pedro coming in from Peru, and Melissa here is agreeing with the fact that, yes, there is so much fear out there. Again, that CMO I was talking to was, again, had a healthy respect for AI, but admitted he didn't know enough, his team didn't know enough, and was therefore more stuck in that fear of getting in, the fogey that I've talked about before, rather than this fear of missing out. So again, I think there are quite a few different ways that we can be thinking about how to do this. And so I'm going to just go back to my slides here for a second and just talk about how, first of all, we create value with generative AI. And this is a framework that my co-author Katya Walsh and I have developed for our new book. And it's looking at the three ways that AI creates value. First of all, it's through efficiency and productivity. And it's just driving, again, that operational excellence. There's customer engaging and again, enhancing that customer experience. And then finally, there's transformation. And this is about looking at new ways to do business, to move into new markets, new places where you can play, new ways to win. And it's disrupting not only your business, but other businesses and industries. So when you look at the generative AI flywheel from that perspective, then we look at the processes that are happening and changing too as well. And I also have a small framework here. Again, I'm just showing this for the first time. And it is the idea that there are four dimensions of looking at how processes are being impacted by generative AI. The first is about looking at processes that are highly repetitive versus ones that require a tremendous amount of creativity. And so they're not going to be the same versus they're the same. And you can expect that they're going to be done the same way. Simplicity versus complexity. Simple processes, a lot easier to tackle with generative AI, but it also means that the complex processes could be simplified thanks to AI. Structured versus unstructured data, again, a lot easier to work with structured data, sort of no brainer. We can just throw AI against it. But again, are there ways that AI can take complex, unstructured data and make sense of it so that we can use it? And then finally, when is human judgment required? What type of human judgment? How much? And could you relieve or supplement and augment that human judgment in different ways? So I'm going to go through each of those dimensions in just a second. I'm just checking to see if there are any comments out here. Oh, again, it's just a couple of the comments here from Jay. And building custom models to do quality assurance on monitoring work, and also building a response library for use and responding. Okay, social channels. Jay, you're automating a lot of different things here. So I think it's absolutely fantastic. And again, I think, again, I'm familiar with the work that Jay is doing. Again, thinking systematically about the way that AI is going to support your operations is a really great approach. So I'm going to go through and talk about each of these four dimensions in greater detail and give you examples of how they can support those three areas of value generation around efficiency, around customer engagement, and also around transformation. So the first area is repetition versus creativity. And the idea here is that you're moving from, you have some routine and predictable processes that you have, and also others that are highly creative, that require innovation and sometimes very complex decision making. So let me just show you the next slide, which actually has this in a better format. I realized I did forgot to take out that one last slide. So when you're talking about efficiency, it's about automating the repetitive tasks like data entry, like generating reports. And for example, who loves to create these compliance reports? So it could potentially, again, just generate those automatically. And around customer engagement, the idea here is that can you take some of the areas that are more routine and automate those so that you can focus more on the creative tasks. So using AI to draft a personalized customer engagement that you may have. And in particular, being able to customize those communications in a way that still takes the overall creativity of the message, but then uses the data that you have to personalize it at scale. And then finally, in the transformation area, it's how do you augment the more creative things that you are doing with AI generated suggestions? So, for example, using AI to brainstorm marketing campaign concepts or to brainstorm visual ideas. And again, I hear from, and I've seen some of the research that shows that AI may not come up with the answer, so to speak, the ultimate answer, but the way that it participates, just throwing out volumes of different ways of thinking about a problem, inspires the humans in the room who are working on this to think about things in a much more creative, expansive way. So again, I think again, just in this one area of repetition versus creativity, we oftentimes run towards the repetitive areas to automate, but also look for areas within the creative areas that AI can support that process too as well. All right, I want to go on to the next one, which is simplicity versus complexity. Let me just hide this slide so we can see it a little bit better. So, from efficiency and productivity, it's about looking at these very simple processes that have either very high volumes or could be partially automated. So, for example, when you're processing invoices coming in, you can use AI to extract and then categorize the information rather than having a person look at it and enter it in. It's something, again, that AI just does extremely well. When it comes to customer engagement, again, it may be simplifying some of the more complex customer engagements that you have. So, for example, using a chatbot that provides more of those detailed questions and answers from a knowledge base. And then breaking down highly complex situations using cross department workflows. And this is the thing that I thought very interesting. It's about taking these little modules within the departments, connecting them, that helps you break down these complex processes. So, for example, you may take some external data about changes that's happening in the environment and adjust your supply chain. Again, supporting that by analyzing the things that are happening out there and then providing some recommendations. Again, the whole idea here is not that you can take something that's truly complex that requires that sort of human touch. It's about simplifying that complex into easier ways so that the complexity is broken down. All right, let me go on to the next area, which is structured versus unstructured data. I want to take a little bit of time here because we oftentimes think about AI, you just throw it against unstructured data, it can do magical things. And for those of us who have been working with unstructured data, that's not the way it works. It really helps for that unstructured data to have a little bit of structure against it, just even the tiniest little bit to get it ready for the AI to analyze. But clearly, with highly structured data, such as forecasting or performance tracking, AI is fantastic at taking that and creating, for example, dashboards from your sales performance, about your sales performance out of your CRM data. Something that could have been very tedious can just be easily automated. And then let's look at customer engagement, where again the ability to take some more unstructured data, like all the custom emails that may be coming from somebody, or looking across custom emails. Again, more unstructured, usually a set of formats, and you can analyze those emails and then again recommend some very specific offerings to people. And then finally, looking at unstructured data. Again, it's looking at how can you take unstructured data, put structure against it with the AI so that you can do something with it. And one of the things, examples I thought was really interesting is one organization had a lot of user generated content on top of on top of its products. And so people were generating all these tutorials and how-tos, so they took and looked at, analyzed all of those videos, understood the key elements behind them, understood which audiences they were going to use AI to take that unstructured data, make it more structured, and then use that underlying new data to create new learning paths, new ways of courses that were much more personalized to people's situations. So if they were trying to do this on their own, they could be brainstorming all day long, thinking about the actual ways to create new trainings around their products. But instead, they went out and looked at what was everyone else doing because they were creating these guides and tutorials in the absence of this information from the company. And so they were able to do that analysis, find new areas, and then develop that. Along the way, they also discovered new ways and offerings they could change their products for. Again, just helping with the innovation process too as well. So I think it's so important to again think about these different dimensions. And I want to go into just the last one very quickly, and then we'll talk about how to implement all of this. The last area is about human judgment. And this is where we talk about having a human in the loop. And this is not about totally removing the human judgment, but it's about saying what kind of judgment is really needed, what parts of it can be automated. And so when you're looking at efficiency, again, there are some low judgment tasks like data summation or categorization of taking data in and summarizing things that can be fully automated because they don't require a tremendous amount of human judgment. So, summarizing notes, flagging anomalies in financial records, AI is really good at that. Now, when you're talking about customer engagement, there may be some areas where human judgment could be improved. So, for example, if you're an agent dealing with a really complex customer situation in front of you, using AI suggestions coming in, who's analyzing the conversation real time and on a screen, creating new options for the agent to understand. That's again this area where agent the human agent is using their judgment, filtering through the suggestions coming from the AI, but again, helping with a very complex task. And then finally, the last area on transformation is redefining what it means to have a high judgment process. So again, we think about the medical profession as having high judgment, tremendous amounts of training and continuing education that goes into being a doctor, for example. And using AI and the insights from it as a foundational tool for that higher level of human judgment is a way that AI is transforming the way that we even practice that judgment. So, for example, when you have a medical record for a patient, being able to summarize that with AI could be extremely helpful for that medical professional then to take that into context in their diagnosis. So, again, we're thinking about different ways that human judgment and the role of human judgment in processes is going to fundamentally change so that we can automate and support human judgment, never completely taking it away, except for areas where it's just not highly required. But for even the areas where high judgment is there, being able to support that judgment in new and different ways is where I think generative AI is really showing its colors. So I want to go through and just see what else we have here in terms of comments. All right. I see here a couple different things. Melissa just says personalized learning is such an amazing supercharged way to train people. I absolutely agree with that. Again, you may have seen some of my earlier live streams where I was talking about my AI avatar and the fact and the ability to be able to not only literally use different languages to for me to communicate in different languages is one of the ways that's interesting, but also to create training that's really personalized to the way a person learns, the way whether they're more visual learners or auditory learners or experiential or kinetic learners. We can customize courses and optimize them for the way that people learn it best. So I'm excited about that. Okay, let's see. We can have a couple other comments here. Jay, this is a good segue into my next section about what do we do about all of this. So again, I think Jay is saying, how do you actually do this? Identify core cultural competencies. And I think, again, we'll talk about culture in just a second. And if I groups that align with the culture, sandbox, again, experiment, prototype, pilot for a proof of concept, and then have a flexible and adaptive rollout plan. So, Jay, you're anticipating what I'm going to talk about next, which is applying the four dimensions. So, again, this is about mapping your processes to these four different dimensions. How do we look at a particular process, understand whether it's complex or simple, whether it's repetitive or highly creative, structured or unstructured data is being used, and what's the role of human judgment? And so using these four dimensions to look at that process gives you some insight into how generative AI could support that process or completely automate it. Again, aligning with the value creation. I just recently saw a quote from at a conference where the biggest challenge to the adoption of AI is that we're focusing on use cases rather than the value that can be created from it. And so I think it's so important that we think about looking at these processes, but also aligning them to one of the three ways that we create value for the organization. Look at the feasibility and the impact that it's going to have. If we actually do this, will the change be worth it? Is it going to be something that we can leverage and scale across the entire organization? Again, pilot those high value opportunities, obviously, and then measure and scale it as fast as you can. Just one more slide, and then I'll see if there are any other questions and comments. Um, One of the things that's so important is your role as a leader in shepherding these changes. And I do want to emphasize that it oftentimes feels like generative AI is highly disruptive to an organization. Uh, but I'm a firm believer that we can mitigate much of that pain and agony and make sure that we are not stressing our organization and instead stretching them. And so these are some of the ways that I have seen some organizations and leaders do this as a way to smooth that process. It's not to say it makes it easier, but at least we can take away some of that pain. The first one is to frame AI as a partner, not a replacement. And again, you probably have heard that quote, it's not AI that's going to replace you, it's somebody using AI who will. And that's a bit of a carrot and a stick in a way. But I think the more that we can frame and talk about AI as something that we do in parallel, that it supports us, that it reduces the repetitive, tedious work that nobody really wants to do anymore. Again, I think it's also very important to lead with empathy and acknowledge that the fear is there, that we're concerned about what happens to people's jobs and what they're going to have to learn new skills. The fact that the way that the world looks and then that we loved and enjoyed and put so much energy into building is not going to be the same in the future. And so having that empathy for where people are standing today and how it looks from their perspective is a very important part of all of this change. And then providing that AI literacy and training, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to get the training into people's hands. Either you creating it yourself or taking something off the shelf from places like Coursera, one of my favorite places for courses. And again, I have various resources too as well. But again, there's so many options out there to increase the literacy of your organization. Engage employees in that co-creation and then create that roadmap because there's nothing better than to say, we're here and we're going to go there. And this is the way we're going to get there. And this is what we're aiming for. It is not about the use cases. It is about the journey that you are embarking on and making sure that everyone in the organization is on the same journey as you. And then breaking down the change, communicating it, saying, this is what's going to happen here next time, a few weeks from now, a few months from now, quarters, years from now. So having that plan, having that breakout of what's going to happen when and what the impact's going to be on people, communicating that is so, so important. And so when we talk about processes and change, it seems like a fairly boring topic compared to like, look at what this technology can do. Look at all the whiz bang shiny objects it can have. But this is where the rubber meets the road. And unless you start thinking strategically and systematically about how your processes will change, you're thinking again at the very high level and not thinking about the actual impact it's going to have on people day to day. So, again, I encourage you to use some of these frameworks to help break down and explain how AI is going to change processes and in the process, create value. So let me go through and see what other comments we have here. Um, okay, here's Melissa. I think employees feel that they will be replaced if they can automate their jobs, especially remote workers. It's true. I mean, if you're going to automate everything that I do, then what am I? What's the purpose and the place where I need to fit in? and you owe them that explanation. You can't just hide from it because it's coming and it's going to happen. So what is going to happen to them? And this is a hard challenge, I think, for leaders to say, we anticipate we're going to use AI to automate these things, and that'll be a good thing. So now what will your job look like? What are our plans for you? How are we going to think through? We're going to upskill you, or we're going to have that very hard and very honest conversation. Your job is going to go away, and we have these options for you. And if none of these options work, then we'll work with you to find you your next job, hopefully, and find that next place where you can create value. And and so those are really hard conversations to have. And yet, if you don't have them, it's as if you're sweeping it on the rug and you're saying even more so, you as an employee do not matter. And so employees have always asked just two things of leaders in their organization: to be honest and to be fair. So just be honest about what's happening with my job, and then give me a fair chance to find another job, or give me a fair chance to look for another job without a 2-week notice. So I think this is what we owe our employees: the honest truth about what's happening with their jobs, and then what the implications are for them. And the sooner we can have that honest conversation with people, the better off we're going to be. It's much in the same way that organizations who go through acquisitions or strategic changes, they're starting new divisions, but they're also closing down other ones. And to have honest conversations with people about what that future looks like as early as possible is a way for everyone to prepare. And so, again, it's Melissa, to this point, I think it's very important to provide a vision of the future. Where are we going? And right now, what I'm seeing is that most organizations are throwing literally AI against the wall and seeing what sticks. And that's good for the early days, but very quickly, you need to have a strategy and to be able to explain, how is AI going to support our strategy? How is it going to make us more competitive? How are we going to win with AI? And what are the implications for each person in the organization? All right, so that's what I have for today. Let me share with you what I'm going to do next week. Again, it'll be my last live stream for the year, and I'm going to talk about my predictions for 2025, and also what you need to do to prepare. It drives me up the wall when people are like, "Oh, this is what's going to happen in 25, and we're going to see this happening, and these are the changes," and you end up with a big "so what?" And so I really want to talk about what I see evolving over 2025, and how we need to start thinking and preparing ourselves for these changes that are coming along. So join me next week for that. I'll be off for 2 weeks after that. Just see if there are any other questions. Oh, here's a last question here, Valeria. What are the ethical considerations when integrating AI into critical organizational processes? There are so many. So everything um, from are we being how are we going to be responsible and making sure that things don't go wrong? So this is the whole idea of having that human in the loop initially, where when you're integrating AI, because it is not completely reliable, how do we build our trust around it? So from compliance, regulatory, legal points of view, but that's from a responsible AI side of things, we need to make sure that things don't blow up, and do this in a very responsible way. Also, things like fairness and quality are issues that come up over and over again. How can we trust the AI to do a good job? How can we trust AI to be fair? Is there bias embedded somewhere in that AI algorithm? So constantly testing it. And again, I think the ethical issues are primarily around when they, and again, ethical issues of when things come up that contradict with your value. Both choices A and B conflict with what your values are, so you have to make a choice. And so the AI, more than anything else, forces us to take stances on things like, what does fairness mean? Is it being equitable, or are we trying to promote equity? Those are two very different ideas of what is valuable to an organization. And so AI calls into question constantly, because it's creating new ways of value, of creating value in an organization, of what do we value? What's right? What's wrong? What's the right way to do things? And so having an approach that, and taking the time and having the resources to deal with these ethical issues is extremely important in AI. So it's great to think about all the things we can automate, but there are sometimes questions about what should we automate? How do we be transparent about what we're automating, both internally and externally? So again, lots of questions and issues. Thank you, Valeria, for bringing that up and giving me the opportunity to talk about that. All right, so I am at time. Thank you so much for joining today, and I will see you next week to talk about predictions. Take care. Stay safe out there. Bye bye.